a generous introduction. Um, there is a particular topic I would like to cover tonight, and I have a lot of people who are very interested in this particular topic. Let me tell you just a little bit about me in terms of what I do. I consider myself a self specialist. In other words, I specialize in the self. And I think that's very important because the self is so crucial for virtually any type of healing, from any type of dysfunction, problem, issue. I just think it's such a core uh, place for people to heal, which tends to clear up so many problems and symptoms in their life if they can really do their self work. And so I do like being a self specialist, and I like thinking of myself as that. The way I get self specialist is it does come from a family systems approach view of healing, recovery, therapy, counseling, coaching. In particular, I like the Murray Bowen approach. Um, a self specialist is someone who can midwife or guide someone towards a real self or towards real self differentiation. And I think that is such a critical and important skill. And I believe that's someone that I would like people who are hurting to find for themselves. A self specialist needs to have done their own self work, and their own self worth, but a self specialist needs to have done that work. Now, does that mean the work is ever completed or perfected? No, we work on ourselves throughout all of our lives. But a self specialist has really worked on that area and knows how to help someone go from non self to self, from pseudo self to real self, from, as I'm going to talk about tonight, annihilated self to a blossoming, real, fruitful self. Unfortunately, there are many professionals, as I know from having done this work for like 37 years or so, that there are many professionals who haven't done their own self-work, and they also have limited results in their offices. And I think partly that's because they haven't wanted or chosen or been afraid or in denial about their own issues and their own self-needs in terms of becoming a self. And so self-work is also the basis of individual therapy or coaching, couple and marital therapy or coaching, and family therapy or coaching. That self-work is so vital for that. If you can discover or find a great self-specialist, then you will have struck gold. And tonight, I'd like to talk about an important topic that's entitled The Annihilated Self. I like that phrase, I like that term, in that what I find with individuals who have grown up in abusive homes, severely narcissistic, if not sociopathic or toxically narcissistic homes with narcissistic parents, in very dysfunctional families, even adult children of alcoholics who grew up in very alcoholic homes in which it was chaotic, narcissistic, chaos is really the best way to describe, say, an alcoholic home. Those who have grown up in those environments, I find that experience of them having an annihilated self, and this is where they begin. And they have had it all of their lives. They don't feel like they've gotten the memo. They didn't get the memo that everybody else got, who has a self. their self was not developed, and maybe even in some ways aborted long before it got to be mature or grow or become small. It really did get cut off. And so this annihilated self is what they've experienced all their lives. Now you might say, well, how can you be annihilated self and still be an adult, go to work, pay your bills, those kind of things? Because we can have a pseudo-self. And most of us can develop a pseudo-self and have a pseudo-self to function in everyday life. But a pseudo-self is not the same thing as a real self. If I can give you an example in family systems terms, or maybe a family systems example. Here is a pseudo-self. I can become reactive and tell my boss off at work. And say, I'm not going to do that, and you're not going to treat me that way, yada, yada, yada. Hey, that sounds rather forceful, kind of assertive, if not aggressive, but it sounds kind of powerful. Then I go home to my family of origin, and I find myself having no voice, having no boundaries, cannot express how I feel, can't be aggressive, can't be assertive, feel shamed. Now, I might get reactive. Now, you tell me, what is the self that we used with our boss? Is that a real self, or is that a pseudo-self? In family systems understandings, that's a pseudo-self. Our real self is back there with the family of origin as turning into that child when we go home and are with our family of origin. That's the level of real self that we have. And then some people go home, or can't even go home because it's so toxic. Some people go home and it's so chaotic, so toxic, so abusive, so annihilating that they have no self at home when they go home to their family of origin. They have no self at all. It's annihilated. And what do I mean by annihilated? Maybe I should define that. It means utter destruction, non-existent, vanished, ceases to exist, or, as they say in narcissistic terms, when you've experienced that narcissistic wound growing up with narcissistic parents, it's the emptiness wound. Well, why would they call it the emptiness wound? Because it's the annihilated self. The self doesn't exist. It's a whole. So our self is a whole. And when we have that whole, we have to develop a pseudo-self to survive. And we do the best we can. I'm not blaming anybody for having a pseudo-self. I fully understand that. That makes sense. We have to have something, but it's not a real self. It's a pseudo-self. That pseudo-self will overfunction, underfunction, become overreactive, become underreactive, will get involved in triangles, will cut off, will do all kinds of things with the pseudo-self. And actually, pseudo-self is better than no self at all. But unfortunately, it is a pseudo-self, a not real self. I thought of when you talk about annihilation, there's a physics view of looking at annihilation. And in physics, annihilation occurs this way. A particle and an antiparticle come together and annihilate each other and then become some other form of energy. A particle, a narcissist, or let's say a child, comes together with an antiparticle, the narcissist who wants to destroy yourself and not want yourself to live, be accepted. They annihilate each other because the narcissist doesn't have a healthy self or a self. By the way, narcissism is not a self. It's a role. And that the child then has no self, and then another form of energy takes root, pseudo-self. I'm trying to be, I'm trying to find, I'm trying to exist. And then we end up doing those roles that we are used to. And I've got a couple questions coming in. We will get to those in just a moment. Let's talk about when we have that new form of energy I talked about with the particle and the antiparticle and then creating a new form of energy. It's that enmeshed, non-existing self energy. We become clumped to our abuser or clumped to our family of origin. Oh, we're going to have lots of questions. And that's where I become a mom me. I become a dad me. I become a dad mom me. Or a dad Jerry. Or a mom Jerry. That's that new form of energy that we become. So, again, what is an annihilated self? What a self or person would become if one could not talk, feel, or think. That's what an annihilated self becomes. An annihilated self sees love as enmeshing and clumping emotionally. Because if you don't clump and don't enmesh, you have a self. If you don't have a self, then all you're going to do is clump and enmesh. That's all we know to do, is to glob on to something. Because a self doesn't glob on. A non-self will. Love is enmeshing, and enmeshing equals survival. Because without that, we are nothing. Totally nothing. No thing. An annihilated self has no worth, often full of and guided by shame. Shame is our navigation system for annihilated self. Guilt keeps our annihilated self from venturing to true selfhood or self-differentiation. Guilt keeps you from venturing into health. It tells you, don't do that. That'll be a problem. That's wrong. And then that keeps us in place. Shame is our navigation. Guilt is our boundaries. Both are very unhealthy, very sick, and will keep us in a box that we cannot survive in very well. And the annihilated self indicates or shows that invisibility is a virtue. We need to be invisible because we don't exist. And the annihilated self, for the annihilated self, our gut knowing or our intuitive awareness is not faulty, but it is bad and suspect. It is bad and suspect. Your intuitiveness is bad and suspect. So, also the annihilated self has a paradigm, a worldview, our givens, our inner sense of knowing. All of that is what I consider subjectivity. That's our subjectivity. That also is described in family systems works by Lerner, by, now I've lost her name, Gilbert. Roberta Gilbert, I believe. Peter Titleman. There are many who talk about that subjectivity, and all of that is broken, scary, wrong, hurtful, and dangerous. So everything about your own self-awareness or self-knowing or intuitiveness should all be mistrusted, and it should all be considered dangerous. An annihilated self views it that way. Self-knowledge is reviled in an nihilistic environment. Other knowledge is the only way to survive. Knowledge of other, not knowledge of self. Don't worry about knowing yourself, only know others and what they want, need, desire, demand. That's what's important for the annihilated self. Self is seen as the root of all evil. The annihilated self cannot enjoy playfulness without anxiety. In fact, playfulness can be very painful. And I can explain that more. We can talk more about that later. The annihilated self is over-serious. We know that rigidity, stiffness, callousness, and not enough flexibility is unhealthy for our bodies, our skin, our organs, and all of biology. Over-seriousness is a part of that whole continuum and process. If our emotional process is fossilized, then it's too hard. It needs to be flexible where we can be serious and we can be playful. When we're often over-serious, we cannot be playful and we are rigid and either or, black or white, all or nothing. Ooh, I forgot. Hey, Mark, could you do me a favor? I have that book that you and I were talking about today. It's on my desk.
Who's the author?
The Learner book. I'm sorry, I meant to bring that with me, and Mark's going to grab that for me. The annihilated self sees all of his or her life as being personally felt by others. Reactions, successes, and failures are all personally experienced by other people. In other words, your failures are a personal ping and an attack on significant others. An annihilated self believes that. If I'm successful, it pings you, and it is personally felt by you. If I have a failure, then that is personally experienced by you. And oftentimes, all of those are considered an attack on other people. Just my being is an attack or personally taken by other people. An annihilated self will experience that. The annihilated self the annihilated self, folks, are always being eaten alive by others. And they are supposed to be eternally grateful for the meal. The annihilated self is learned and experienced, and I want to talk about, I want to read just a very brief quote in here, if I may, and then I'll get to a couple of your questions that I have down here. Children who are raised, I'm going to use narcissists, but that can be true of abuse, toxicity, even codependency that's severe, alcoholism, drug addiction, chaotic and toxic lives of all kinds. Children who are raised by narcissists leave home with unrealistic expectations coupled with the shame they felt when they couldn't measure up to their parents' standards. Yet, there is a double bind, and the annihilated self is totally caught in double binds. Yet there's a double bind that exists. As harsh and unloving as narcissist parents may be, when they deign to smile upon you, it's as if the stars fell from heaven. It's intense, it's absorbing, and it's addictive. Can you see how the intermittent and extraordinary experience propels these adult children to seek out this dynamic in another narcissistic man or woman? And thus it continues on. And research shows that this is the most addictive bond there is. I thought that would be helpful to share that brief quote with you. And then I have one other quote before I get to some questions here. And this is that annihilated self. The annihilated self is learned and experienced as a profound sense of shame because of the trauma of not being seen, the trauma of having needs and knowing they won't be met, the trauma of being alone with no one available for connection. Do you know how painful that would be to a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 12-year-old? And in fact, if you want to know, I want you to think about your own children at their own ages. Think of them as you refusing to see them. Think of them as you refusing to not meet their needs as dependent children. Think of them as them being alone and no one, including yourself, is available to them for connection. And think of them as being in distress with no one available to comfort them. How would your children feel? That's how you felt growing up if you grew up in these families. And that's how you began to experience an annihilated self. I thought that might be helpful to use that quote. Well, I've offered you way too much information. I made a few notes tonight before I talked, and certainly I didn't cover the topic exhaustively, but I wanted to at least pose that for you. There's a question here. Jay Taylor writes the question, how do you deal with a significant other who is a victim of narcissistic and codependent parents? Ooh, I think that's a very good question. One of the ways in which I would do that is I would do some reading and learning about what it's like to be married to someone who is an ACOA. I have a video or two on that might help you. I would read material on what it's like to be loving and caring for someone who's bipolar. I'm not saying your spouse is bipolar. I'm only saying the information is useful. That's all I'm saying. I'm not diagnosing them with that. I'm just saying it's a useful tools to use, because you're going to understand their moods, their shifts, the things that are going on, and also to accept their woundedness and the annihilation of themselves, and how you can be nurturing and helpful. So I would begin to use those as resources in that respect. I also would think about if I had a spouse who was a victim of narcissistic and codependent parents, I would definitely encourage them to seek a guide or help to them, and I would be very cautious about being therapizing. I might be therapeutic, but I wouldn't be therapizing with them. In other words, because that's only going to trigger their shame and their acute sense of a loss of self. So one of the things we want to be is we always want to share medicine with a spoonful of sugar with someone who's grown up in narcissistic and codependent families. So we say, honey, you seem to believe that I wanted to harm you or hurt you. I want you to know that I love you and care about you more than anyone else and choose you over everybody else. I also want to say, those were not my motives. I do care about you. If you have a hard time accepting that from me, then can we help you talk to someone or find someone? And maybe I need to talk to someone and find someone to help us as a couple. And Jay Taylor, I hope that is a help to you. Maybe not the full answer. I don't know the whole situation, but I want to give you a couple of ideas that you might consider. I have a question, from Jay again, who asks, can that person ever be a suitable spouse? I think everyone could be a suitable spouse. It depends on how much they are willing or open to looking at their self that is annihilated, to looking at their past and accepting that their past has affected them. And again, some people have a very difficult time doing that. Some people are so wounded and broken, I have to admit, it would probably take more than one lifetime for them to heal. And I don't know how to say that any other way. There are some who I think, and again, those who have grown up in narcissistic homes or codependent homes or alcoholic homes or abusive homes are all on a continuum. And so I don't know where they might fall on that continuum. The closer they are to the healthier continuum, the better chance they have recovery. The closer they are down to this other end of the continuum, Charles Manson, Bundy, serial killer, they're not going to get better. That's not going to happen. Most people do not fall down on that end of the continuum. They do fall in the middle towards the top. And so that's how I view people, or at least I accept people as being there until they prove it otherwise to me. Because I like to help people and be positive with them. And also I feel people can. I've seen a number of people who have been severely abused or misused or grown up in narcissistic homes recover. And it is about a recovery process. I mean, if I can see alcoholics and heroin addicts who have totally ruined their whole lives with what they've done, if they have a chance to recover and can recover, could not someone who grew up in a narcissistic home recover? I know that many of them have had annihilated selves go out and replace it with heroin and alcohol and methamphetamine and God knows what else, sexual addiction, gambling addiction, and then they're able to turn their lives around. I think there is a lot of hope. Guy and Jackie, I believe, is who has another question. What do we call someone who always needs others to be happy over themselves, and if others are not happy, then they feel worthless? Well, I mean, I must say that would be kind of my classic definition of codependency. I feel as good as you feel. I feel as happy as you are happy. I feel as unhappy as you are happy. That's a kind of a classic experience and symptom of codependency. And I am codependent, meaning I am dependent on you. I am a, what do they call that with the, you're the host and I'm the one on there sucking out self from you. And so if you're happy, I'm happy. And that's what enmeshment is. And that's a classic view of codependency. And if you're not happy, then I am worthless. And I feel bad. How many children have grown up with that in their homes? But what I'm talking about in terms of the annihilated self was that the parent doesn't even accept the good that the child does and shames them for the good, shames them for the effort. I mean, that's really sick and that's really psycho, so to speak. And that really is painful and toxic. And that's where the self doesn't develop. For many of us, we grew up in homes where there was some nurturing, some sense of connectedness. And though we might have grown up codependent because there was still enmeshment, still neediness and dependency, but it wasn't quite as toxic as that severe toxic narcissism that people have experienced. So I'd say that's codependency, and we do feel worthless when, I felt worthless when the weather wasn't right for an activity I had planned. I felt bad because everybody was unhappy about what I was doing, say when I was a pastor. Then I feel worthless as a pastor. Well, maybe I didn't do anything wrong. But I took over responsibility for other people's experiences. That's what I was trying to say when I talked about I believe everything I do, say, experience, and live is taken personally by everybody around me. That's the annihilated self experience. If I do good, then I make everybody happy. If I do bad, then I make everybody miserable. If I fail, then I make everybody shamed. That's a global experience that's quite unhealthy. And we can overcome that. And we can learn to let go of that. Let's see. Is that Arlane or Arane? I'm not sure. Ariane. Arjane. I'm not sure what their name is. I'm sorry. What books would you recommend to help our annihilated selves? I think that's a very good question. I would use, the areas that let me see here. Let's see if I've got, I think I've got a few more notes.
Oh, get after those.
Oh my gosh, so what can we do? I forgot about those notes, forgive me. I do have some solutions. I just wanted to talk about the problem. And I'll talk about a couple of books when I do that. So what can we do? Break down our denial of having a pseudo-self and all the years and accept that we have experienced and do experience an annihilated self. We seek out guides and midwives and listeners, not gurus and leaders and teachers who have the answer, but seek out midwives who have traveled the path to help you birth the self. Give yourself permission to talk, feel, and think. Study health and normalcy, or the normal selfhood. For example, one book is by the Friels called Friel and Friel, F-R-I-E-L, What is Normal for the Adult Child. That's a good book on just what is normal. Lerner books, Harriet Lerner on Bowen Family Systems. Jenny Brown's book on growing yourself up. Andrea Shearer's book, The Mindful Compass. Melody Beatty's book talking about codependency and healing from codependency. Practice self-soothing. That's a practice that can be learned. Or reparenting your inner child. Doing inner child work, seeing yourself as having an inner child, and relating to that inner child in a much loving way, not in a mean, narcissistic way in which we learned. There's inner child books by Charles Whitfield, Healing the Inner Child. Reparent your inner child and restore your real self. And I do encourage people to accept their pseudo-self for now. It's okay to accept that pseudo-self. That is not a bad self. It is just a replacement for self. It's not bad. It's just what we have to do to cope and survive. Learn to walk away from toxicity and painful others. Practice detachment. Find a support community. Don't take responsibility for the narcissistic, alcoholic, rageaholic, or abuser. Stop expecting empathy, sympathy, or caring from toxic people. Practice self-authenticity slowly and within a family system's goal of, and there's a whole bunch I could talk about there, but I'll talk about that later. Define and secure some self before you start declaring self. And I can talk about that later. That may pique some interest. Remember, it's not about how. Everybody asks me, how do you do this? How do you do this? It's about when. When are you ready to do this? Get help from someone who can midwife and birth your real self into existence. Find a self specialist. Some of the other books I think of that can be helpful. Where's the one I have?
There it is. Right.
Here's a very good book. It is I don't know if you can see this, but it's called The Object of Affection is in My Reflection. Coping with Narcissists by Raquel, Rokelle, Lerner. The other Lerner books was by Harriet Lerner. This is Raquel Lerner. Excellent book. Excellent book about self as well. I think those are, there we go, I do see that. So I think those might be some helps to you. I also have a listing of resources that I could send to you if you want to email my email address, jwlearning, JW, my initials, learning as in school learning, at hotmail.com. And I'll send you a listing of reading resources that might be of help to you. Well, I'm sure I probably overwhelmed you probably and shared too much. That's what I wanted to share tonight, folks, and I appreciate you being open and listening and being a part of our broadcast.
Thank you for being here tonight, Jerry. I know we get lots of... Can I borrow your book for a little bit? I wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
I know you have a shorter drive since you live closer.
I do.
And we're just so thrilled to have a rested, energized Jerry Wise around. And I just think that you seem more rested, you seem more happy, and I think you're going to be able to help a lot more people.
I agree. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah. So
Great.
God bless you, man.
Thank you, Mark. Thank all of you, too. Have a good night.
So we do have
Hi everybody, my name is Jerry Wise and I'm a life and relationship coach, and I see individuals online. I work with individuals in groups, and I have a website and also a workshop coming up. But this particular video is entitled Staying on Task Even When Experiencing Discomfort. Jenny Brown lists in her book, Growing Yourself Up, the 7 characteristics of a mature or more self-differentiated inner adult. And this is number 2. You can watch my other video on the first one, and I'm going to explain and talk about all 7. They're all very important. I think for those who are in recovery, that this process of staying on task is a way for us to not abandon the inner child. If we as the adult stay on task, we then are protecting the inner the inner child, and we're also caring for them and not abandoning them. Because often when we meet resistance in relationships or systems, we tend to abandon ourselves and abandon the inner child and continue to operate in the system in a status quo way, and no changes are made. The inner child becomes disappointed and hurt and abandoned, and we as an adult feel more cowardice or worthless or shame. And so it's very important that we learn to stay on task even when we experience discomfort. Peter Senge, in his book, The Fifth Discipline, in which he applies systems thinking to corporations, businesses, and organizations. It's an excellent book. He's kind of the creator of the learning organization used by a lot of corporations to help them break out of their quick fix thinking. and start using systems thinking, which is a more long-term approach, which actually provides more change and actually allows change to happen. Quick fixes often don't create change, but only for a moment. And he writes, resistance is a response by the system trying to maintain the implicit system goal, or the implicit system belief, or the implicit system role, or the implicit system addiction, or the implicit system dysfunction. Because it wants to maintain that dysfunction. And so if you begin to operate differently, it's going to resist you. The system, the family, the church, workplace, whatever system we're in is going to resist us. And so if we understand that there is this resistance, then it's very important that we're able to sustain ourselves through that resistance and find a new setting and a reset on the other side of us functioning in the system or in the relationship or in the marriage. So again, it's staying on task when experiencing discomfort. Oftentimes, those of us, me included, for many, many, many years, we are used to folding at the first sign of resistance when changing our role in the system. When we want something to change for us, we then present that change to the system, we get resistance, and then we fold. And the status quo, the equilibrium, the homeostasis continues. And then we feel discouraged, upset, and much like we have failed and that and hopeless, there is no use. Because if the system won't accept the new me, then why even try? Well, that's a quick fix or a very linear way of looking at change. If we look at change in a systems way, we can see the value in persistence or in courage or in consistency that, like Brene Brown talks about in her books when we're self-differentiating. And Brene Brown is another Murray Bowen Family Systems author. And so is Jenny Brown, Andrea Shera, Harriet Lerner. Those are good books for you to see change in a systems way rather than just a cause and effect way, which oftentimes will fail. So when we are on task, we want to learn to stay in place regardless of what the system is doing and stay out of the emotional glue that's happening and resist the emotional glue and the pull and the enmeshment or the rejection. I had a client I was working with yesterday and she remembered some of my words and she said she was feeling so much better because she always kind of feared rejection. She's a very good professional, wonderful person, a beautiful woman, and she feels so insecure when she feels rejected by a boss or a coworker or someone like that. And she was saying, well, Jerry, as you say, when I sense that rejection, I realize it really can't hurt me. It doesn't make my pants fall down. And she used another phrase too. I can't remember what it was. But right, it doesn't make my pants fall down. Why am I worried about their rejection? And so we learn those tools to be able to stay engaged with our new change. And so we want to learn to stay in place if we're trying to make a change in the system. And I'll give you an example of this at the end of the video here. We want to learn to stay in place. Stand your ground. Make your change intentional versus reactive. If we are reacting, then we're probably not going to affect a change. No matter, I don't care if we yell and scream or whatever we do, it won't affect a change. It will keep things the same. If we are intentional, then we can really make a change in our functioning in the system. And again, our issues And we're going to be triggered by others when we begin to make a change. And that's acceptable. That should be expected. I'm sorry, not expected. And how can we strategically deal with that? Increase your ability to hang in there and to tolerate this discomfort. The discomfort is the system's feelings. So when we begin to make a change, Dad, I wish you would not tell me that I'm stupid. That's very rude and I don't like that. And he said, well, you've always been stupid. I don't know what's wrong with you. Now I start to feel the system's feelings of shame. I'm not really stupid. I don't know what I'm not even sure Dad really even thinks I'm stupid. He's just using that as a way to keep the system in a status quo equilibrium, to continue the same dysfunction. And so when I have that system's feeling of shame, which is what it is, if I do something shameful, then I might feel shame. That's a true feeling. If he says I'm stupid, then I start to feel shame, and that comes from the relationship system. It's okay to ignore systems feelings. Don't ignore your true feelings, but it's okay to ignore systems feelings. And a lot of people don't know what feelings to ignore and what feelings to feel and let go of. Practice persevering and exercising your courage. Don't wait for it to happen, but to make it happen. And I've always said anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. So even poor attempts at self-differentiation is better than reactive attempts at making a change. Now that's important. Poor attempts at self-differentiation and intentional work is better than reactive interventions that we try. Don't wait for it to happen. Many times we will wait, well, I'll do it when the system will accept me. I'll do it when Dad's not going to shame me. I'll do it. Well, you'll be waiting for decades, if forever, for that to change. And it probably won't. So we're learning to change us while accepting that the system is not going to change. And when we do that, when we change us while accepting the system is not going to change, we actually end up changing the system. Not directly, but indirectly, because we're bringing more calmness and more a sense of self to the system, which is what it needs and what it lacks. So staying on task. Trying something new always involves this characteristic. Use intention versus passion or systems feelings to drive you to be a true self in a system. Use an intentional. You will be more calm, will be less reactive. Don't be intense, but work, act, and feel calmer. Work on feeling calmer and being calmer rather than intense when we're making changes in a relationship, a marriage, a family, workplace. Avoid giving in because you'll lose self at that point. Then we become more our pseudo-self, which is a self based on what others want, desire, and need you to be. That's a pseudo-self, and many of us have learned that growing up. An intense blow-up becomes reactive and confrontational, which does nothing for a system, only to make it worse or more, or tightens the relationship even more and tightens the dysfunction. Intentional ignoring of the system's feelings. Just like the client who talked to me who's in business, who's in New York City, and she realizes that I can ignore this feeling of rejection. This is a systems feeling from growing up from my parents who were very rejecting, and now I see rejection around every bush. And I can ignore that feeling. I don't have to give it life. I don't have to feed it. I can ignore that and work to ignore it. Now you're saying, well, Jerry, is that easy? No, it's not easy. Of course not. But any work at doing that will provide a lot of benefit, even if it's to a small degree, because you're working in the right direction and it will begin to build on itself. Let me give you a brief example at the end of this video here. One of the first self-differentiation attempts that I tried was, I was a pastor at the time. I don't think I was a bishop. I think I was a pastor at the time. My father had passed away. And at our family, we all gathered around for family meals. And everyone looked to me to give the grace or pray for the meal before we started. And I began to notice that's kind of a pattern. Everybody's just expecting that of me. And, I really don't want to do that. This is my family. I'm not the family pastor. I'm Jerry in the family. I don't want to be the pastor here. I'm the pastor everywhere else. I would like the freedom to do what I would like to do, and I don't really want to do this. And I don't want to do it out of guilt or out of shame or out of they'll be disappointed or why can't I just do it? It's no big deal. I have all those kinds of voices going on, which are systems voices and systems feelings. They're not my true feelings. My true feelings are, I don't want to do this. I like to do this by choice, not because this is your role. And so I began to talk to my mom prior to a Thanksgiving dinner. I can't remember if it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, or when it was. We were all gathering. And like 3 weeks before, I'm saying, hey, Mom, I want to let you know that I just would rather not give the family prayer. I think some other people could do that. She totally ignored what I said. She wasn't even hearing me. So then I thought, well, I better talk to her again about it. So I did. Alerted her again. Mom, hey, I just want you to know that I'm, because last time she didn't even hardly respond. So I think she was saying, it doesn't matter what you want, Jerry. You will be doing it when we get to the meal. So I thought I better talk to her again. And so I did. And she said, I understand. And then ignored me. And I think I might have done it one more time. In fact, I finally said, Mom, if I'm asked to do it, I probably will defer. So I just want you to know that. Again, kind of blank, ignoring it. Doesn't matter. Jerry, this is your role. You need to do this. So then we get to the family meal. Then we're right before we're supposed to eat. Everybody looks at me. Mom looks at me and said, Jerry, could you return thanks or could you give a prayer for the meal? I prepared for that because I thought that was going to happen. I had lots of anxiety, lots of feelings of shame, didn't know what was going to happen or if people would not like me, or here was my grieving mom having lost my dad and I'm treating her badly when I'm just wanting to do what I would like to do. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, including my mother. But at that point, I had prepared intentionally to stay the task, no matter how discomforting it was, and simply say, well, as I had shared with you, Mom, I think I would rather not be the one who gives the prayer for the meal. And then stayed quiet. That was the most difficult quietness I had felt probably in my life. I didn't know what was going to happen. Was my brother going to blow up? Was he going to be mad? Was he going to, why are you treating Mom so badly? Why can't you just do this simple little prayer? You're a pastor. Why can't you do this? So again, it's why can't you do your role, Jerry? What's wrong with you? And so I continued to stay quiet for this pregnant moment that felt like hours. And then finally, Mom decided to go ahead and pray herself. And so there was a great deal of anxiety. And then when Mom prayed, the anxiety came down and there was calmness. And I felt, having watched the family later, that it provided an awful lot of relief and less anxiety for the family, in that I had done that with calmness, though I was still feeling anxious and worried, but I persevered through it, staying calm, or at least acting calm. And I wasn't blaming anybody. I didn't say, well, Mom, I told you that I wasn't going to do this. What's wrong with you? I don't need to shame her, or this is just my I position, self-differentiation, no one else's responsibility. I'm not blaming the family for putting me in this role. I'm just deciding this is what I would like to do. And do it in a calm way and an adult way. And actually, I think the family was never the same in a positive way. Now, not all circumstances like that work out well. We have to practice that. Sometimes there'll be greater resistance. And I understand that. And in other videos, I've talked about the 3 stages of resistance that we have to go through before the system resets with a new you and a new less anxiety. So I wanted to bring this to you today and give you an example. I hope that this has been a help to you. I have a workshop coming up in a couple of months, and I hope you'll join the workshop. I have coupons for people who are site members on my website. You can give me a call if you'd like to work with me. I'd be happy to do that. And thank you for watching. Have a great day. Hi everyone. My name is Jerry Wise, and I'm the director for the Center for Self-Differentiation. I work with clients in my office. I work with them online, on Skype, basically anywhere that in the English-speaking world. I've got a lot of clients who come to me and ask me, how can I get my family out of me? So this video is entitled Family Hunger, How Can I Get My Family Out of Me? I had a client who was struggling with a very toxic family who had basically used her, cut her off, would treat her disrespectfully, and even tell lies to other siblings about her. No one was willing to confront the troublemaking sister, and no one wanted to cause more problems. My client has felt hurt, confused, abandoned, mistreated by her family, used, and basically used and thrown away by her family. Her sister would fly in from Florida and visit her 2 brothers in the same town where where she lives, but not even tell my client that she had even been there. The sister has children that are close in age to her age and doesn't make any efforts to connect them with their cousins. And this felt really painful for my client, and it has for years. Also, my client did feel very bad because she felt her kids were not getting the benefits from the extended family that she was hoping would happen. And due to this dysfunctional pattern, her kids are kind of alienated from their cousins. The mother had died, and the triangles and cutoffs continued in the family. Mom would be the one to bring the family together. Now everybody's kind of disjointed. This client called me and wanted to know, how can I get them out of me? I realize I can't expect much from them, but I'm still suffering the emotional struggles and problems and hurts and obsession about it and those kinds of things. And she talked about feeling disappointed and even left out and even feeling lonely at times because she feels kind of family abandoned. Many people have lots of leftover what I call family hunger from either family abandonment or the hunger they feel inside to have a normal family, to have those parents that you always wanted, to have the siblings that interact with you in a healthy way, to have your children interact with their children and cousins interact with cousins, etc. And this family hunger, let me describe what family hunger is. This yearning to have what other people seem to have with their family of origin. The longing for understanding parents and supportive siblings, hoping for enjoyable family holiday times with extended family members, wanting to never feel left out, and always being included in family and sibling events. feeling orphaned, feeling abandoned by your family of origin, feeling the pain, shame, and guilt of having parents who don't show very much in the way of caring, empathy, or understanding. And as holidays approach, we wait by the phone to see if we'll get a ring to invite you to family gatherings, rather than just hearing it through the grapevine that they're having a family event somewhere, and I guess I'm supposed to show up. Feeling hurt or disappointed that no one from your family sent you a happy birthday card on your birthday. Even though birthdays may not be so big for you, you feel like, couldn't they even just remember one day, and it's my birthday, everybody knows when my birthday is? Not hearing a word. Something big happens to someone in the family and you're the last to know. Or you come to know it accidentally or through the grapevine. Family hunger involves never feeling accepted by your family of origin, no matter how hard you try. Believing that someday they will change enough to meet your internal needs. Or that you will change enough that they will want to meet your needs or want to be connected to you. You have wanted to cut off emotionally from your family of origin. This also can be family hunger as well, because either we feel enmeshed or we want to cut off. Both are the result of overcloseness. So we want to get enmeshed. Why don't they call me? Why aren't we connecting? Why aren't we talking? To, I'm just going to cut off from them. I don't even care. When really we do care. We're just whistling past the cemetery. In other words, we're going to cut off from them to show them how big we are and that we don't need them anymore. But actually the pain continues inside. And this family hunger can be exhibited in wanting to cut off emotionally from your family of origin because it's just too painful to experience their dysfunction or toxicity. Because it was too difficult to maintain being yourself while staying connected to this rather dysfunctional family. So what can we do to get our family of origin out of us? I've got some tips I want to share with you, and this is what I use and what I talk to clients about and how to help them get their family out of them. One of the biggest problems I deal with is this. Clients have way too high expectations for their siblings and their parents. They assume their family of origin should act normally, though when you get the history from them, actually their family has never acted normally. They should act with empathy and insight and maturity, and the family never has had any of these three since my client was a child. But yet we still expect that and want that to happen. We yearn for that to happen. Our families are made up of people, of human beings who are flawed, who have problems, who have their own issues, and they will get expressed in family dynamics. So lowering our expectation of our family can help tremendously. We expect so much from them. I know, and remember, this video is a generalist video. In other words, I'm talking to a general audience. So maybe in your own family there might be some exceptions. I always try to make that clear in the videos. Sometimes people will comment on my videos and say, oh, well, my family's not exactly that way. Well, it may not be. But in general, I think it's good to lower your expectations for your family of origin. People may ask, well, you mean I should lower my expectations and not expect them to cuss me out and to be disrespectful and to say bad things about me? Well, it's not that I think you should think that's all okay, but what I help people try to understand is that's the way your family is. That's what they do. Why do you let that bother you so much? That's their issue, not yours. Even if they're calling you names, it's still not, that doesn't make it true or real. That's their own anger, frustration, dysfunctional or systemic feelings that cause these things to come out of them. And yet we take them so personally. And it's like, why do you want to take that so personally? Though I fully understand, having experienced that in my own life, for sure, I fully understand how that feels very much like us. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. Do your family of origin grief work. Give up your dream of having the family you always wanted, the family you always wanted to have, or as some have called it, the Norman Rockwell family, if you're a little older, maybe my age, or the Leave It to Beaver family, or the Huxtables, or whomever it might be. Do the grief work that it never was, and it never will be that way. And we may need to cry and get over that and let that go. It's okay to let this go. You will find more happiness and actually experience life in a more happy way if we can let go of this fantasy. Rather than, if I let go of this fantasy, it will never happen and I will be totally miserable the rest of my life. And I'll feel lonely the rest of my life. No, you're going to feel lonely because you haven't let it go. That's why we feel so lonely. Number 3, stop believing this, that all my needs are real. Most of our dependency needs from childhood are not real. They were real when we were children, but in terms of now, they're a part of our inner child architecture. And we expect or want our family of origin to meet those now. Those needs are not realistic and are not real now. For example, me as an adult, I need a mother who accepts and understands me. I need a mother who will not criticize me all the time. These are not real needs. They're wants, but they're not needs. You can live and thrive and be healthy without any of these. So that's why I say they're not real needs. Again, there may be something you want. It's okay to want something. I mean, I'd like to have a Rolls-Royce convertible. That's a want, but it's not a need. And probably will not be getting that anytime soon. So remember, those are wants, not needs. But oftentimes we think of them as needs, and then our existence depends on them. Fourthly, stop believing this, that all my hurts are real. The hurts we feel are often the re-injury to our inner child, but really should not be impactful to our inner adult. Our hurt seems very real. Hurts are real to our inner child, but should be next to meaningless to our inner adult. So if a sister calls you a creepy witch to her brother, that wounds your inner child. As an adult, I don't care what she calls me. It doesn't matter. Inner witch doesn't even make sense. And if she thinks that way, that's the way she thinks. I know I'm not that way. If that's the way she thinks and wants to tell people, and some people want to believe her, what can I do? But I have no need for her not to do that. I have a want for her to not do that, but that I don't have to feel re-injured or re-hurt by that every time she does it. That's my inner child stuff that I haven't resolved. The inner adult should say, who cares? Really? That sounds pretty crazy. You know, a wicked witch or a stupid, arrogant brother or whatever you want to call. Okay, if that's what you think, that's what you think. Though it's not real, and it's not going to affect me as an adult. My inner child, those inner hurts become less and less as I deal with my inner child issues. Stop thinking this. I think all my anger is real. I feel so angry at my parents or my family, I just want to hurt them as badly as I have been hurt. This anger is inner child anger, which requires healing and letting go, and accepting that me, the adult, I don't need to carry around that anger anymore from behaviors that my family have done in the past or even doing now. Anger hurts me. It doesn't hurt them. It hurts me. So I want to be careful how real I put a stake in this anger, that this is totally legitimate and totally reasonable. And often we do get confused between our inner child, or what I call like systemic feelings, feeling systemically hurt. That's where you're a 47-year-old adult, your mother tells your sister that she thinks you're selfish and you feel hurt by that. That's not real hurt. That's systemic hurt. That's hurt from the dysfunctional family systemics in which the inner child has not been healed and it feels re-injured. But as an adult, it really shouldn't matter. You can tell my sister whatever you want to tell her. You can tell her I'm crazy as a loon. I would rather you not, but it's not necessary that you don't. Number 6, when we fight over feeling heard, which is often a complaint I hear quite often from people, where they will say they don't feel heard, they don't feel understood, they don't feel accepted, they don't feel respected, they feel undervalued. Often when we fight over these issues, we are fighting over something which is really an unnecessary item we don't need or require. My family of origin does not need to understand me for me to be happy. My family of origin does not need to accept me for me to be happy. My family of origin does not need to respect me. They don't need to value me. Those are all wants. Those are certainly wants, but they're not needs. I don't need to have that done. We feel needy and fight and have conflict over something like being accepted, because without it, we will have to be miserable or less of a person or maintain our low self-esteem. That's what we often fear and feel. And I heard a quote recently, it was like, but actually it's like two bald men fighting over a comb. I teach people to stop needing and stop yearning and stop fighting over a comb they don't need. I tell the two bald people, why are you fighting over this comb? Neither of you have hair. But we don't see it that way. We see it as, you don't understand, I've got this whole head of hair and I need that comb. So we fight over acceptance and feeling valued and those kinds of things. When actually, let the comb go. You don't need it. 7, letting go does not mean cutting off and emotionally cutting off. It means I am neutral. I have a strong sense of self and I can be who I am. I am not triggered or reactive to your invitations to argue or to put me down or to disrespect me or get in a fight with you or a verbal argument or whatever. I have no need for that. So again, letting go doesn't mean cutting off. It means becoming neutral. And I try to help people become neutral, where they feel more stabilized inside. 8, getting my family out of me means moving from parents with a capital P to seeing them or seeing your family as fellow human beings. Or I've even gone so far as poorly evolved primates. We're all poorly evolved primates. So is your family. So are you. Capital M for mom, capital D for dad, turning them into Mary and Bob rather than mom and dad, and have them so powerful. Resist biology. Well, but they're my parents, Jerry. They are my blood parents. I realize that. They will never not be your blood parents, no matter what. They will never not be that. But biology doesn't mean you have to stay enmeshed. And they say, but they're my parents. And I say, and your point is? They're still adults with, as the Bible says, feet of clay. I mean, we're all human. And we're just all of us. And as adults, they're imperfect. As parents, they were imperfect. This is the dealt we got. This is the hand we got dealt. So you can deal with you. You don't have to make them all right and make them right and fix them and those kinds of things. Number 9, I ask clients to look at the downside of getting my family out of me. Or if I let go of my family, what do I lose? And resolve those fears, issues, and concerns. That's very important. Looking at the downside of a positive behavior or event. That way I can more easily let go of something. Number 10, knowing over-involvement and over-enmeshment with our family of origin is measured by how much we are under-involved in our own lives and our own sense of self. Those that are highly enmeshed and highly worried about what their family of origin is thinking, doing, believing, feeling about them, I then look at their lives and go, well, how much do you do in terms of self-care, self-awareness, self-love, self-determination, self-direction, self-motivation? Often it's very low because they've gotten fixed on their family and haven't moved on, or we haven't grown up. And the less someone is dependent on their family for emotional needs, the more they take care of their own emotional needs for themselves. And this is the increasing the level of self-differentiation. And that's what self-differentiation is about, is becoming you while staying connected. Number 11, fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, or fear of being a family orphan keeps our family of origin stuck inside us. Dealing with those fears, resolving those fears, allows us to let go of that family that's stuck inside of us. And then 12th is the last. If someone just cannot get over the obsession, and is so enmeshed, so obsessive compulsive about their family, I even recommend that they use a 12-step program to deal with their enmeshment and or addiction to their family of origin. Because addiction programs and 12-step programs can help with that obsession, the compulsion, the need to walk on eggshells, the worry, the fear of losing them, the fear of staying in contact with them. Often clients will put in more and more worry time about their family of origin than in their own recovery and self-care. So we may need to work a first step, and you can take a look at the 12 steps and take a look at it, to begin to deal with that obsession about our family of origin. If you want more help with letting go of your family of origin, or getting your family of origin out of you, contact me for expert help in this field. Many people find a great sense of emotional control and less reactivity having sessions with me. They feel less reactive, more self-loving and accepting, a greater peace, happier relationships, and more in control of their lives. They can sleep better, they have less depression, they even learn how to do conflict better in a way that does not frighten them or leave them feeling alone or afraid. There are many rewards to addressing these issues and getting the family out of us and becoming more self-differentiated. Contact me for an appointment. My contact information is on the screen, my email and my phone number. Please join our YouTube channel. If you want more resources or a complete listing of all of my over 100 free videos on YouTube,